Welcome, everybody, to Education Reclaimed, a podcast for teachers looking to reclaim their passion in education. Presented by the amazing people at Live Bearded. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to another edition of Education Reclaimed, a podcast for teachers looking to reclaim their passion in education. I'm one of your hosts, Brett Colley.
And I'm Chad Pettit.
And today we've got a special guest here from the ranks of TikTok, someone who makes amazing content and is clearly passionate about her job and somehow puts up with both of us, which I find interesting. But no, we'll keep her. Let's welcome in Andrea, educator Andrea. Hello.
Hey, thank you for having me on.
We're so glad you're here. It's been a wild ride with the TikTok, huh?
I know. Remember not that long ago when you messaged me and you were like, wow, you have so many followers. And then you surpassed me by like 30,000 followers, Chad. You remember that?
Did I pass you? I wasn't paying attention.
Substantially.
Yeah.
Within like you went to bed one night and you woke up and you got like 20,000 followers overnight. And I just don't understand how, because don't understand how, because of course you're amazing. I follow you. But like, I always hear about people doing that where they make something amazing and it blows up and overnight they get a ton of followers. And mine has been like fast, but like a steady gradual pace over the course of a year, not like woke up one day and had 20,000 followers that were new. That's crazy.
I still don't know how it happened, honestly. And I don't know how it hasn't happened for you. I don't know how you don't have like 500,000 or 600,000 followers.
I'm shocked that she hasn't.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will say that I am very thankful that I did not pick up the trolls along the way that you seem to have picked up, because it feels like you are a magnet, man. Like I had like one really, like when I first started to really grow, I had one guy who created a bunch of different accounts specifically to say horrible things to me. I would block him, then he would create another one. And I only know that because he would use the same phrases attacking me. And I only had the one, but most of the time, knock on wood, now that I'm saying this, I'm sure I'm going to get something nasty this week. I feel like it's been kind of a friendly place for me. But it seems like so often people comment just really crazy stuff for making statements that I would think would not be confrontational in your TikToks and stuff.
You
would think
like teachers have rights and they're
like, how dare you? Well, and maybe I just need to piss people off more. Maybe that's what it is. That's how I grow.
Maybe.
I don't know. Or
I think you should stick with what you got.
Yeah, I mean, your content's amazing, so.
Thank you.
See, you've had that nice gradual grow. I would have much appreciated the gradual grow over a course of time. But
yeah, you want to talk about 20,000 overnight? What was it? 80,000 overnight?
It was.
Oh my gosh! Did you really?
It was.
Brett skyrocketed.
I went from April 1st having 3.7 thousand followers to, I want to say, 118,000 followers by the end of April.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
One video,
that's so crazy.
5.9 million views.
And Brett, isn't that one, when you search teacher TikTok on TikTok, isn't your video one of the ones that shows up? Like, it's like on like the landing page on TikTok. I think the video that you're talking about that went like crazy viral for you.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't like to look at that kind of stuff because I go, I can't believe that actually happened. But yeah, it's there.
Brett's is way up there. And you're all over the place. Like if you search the hashtag
you're
teachers
everywhere.
of TikTok, Andrea,
Am
TikTok
I?
teachers, Andrea. If you search those hashtags way down at the bottom, shoved under the rug, you might find a clips of one of mine where somebody stitched it or something like that. I'm like the hangnail of TikTok.
The stitches, though, must not be doing very well, because I only see your stuff. I have not seen anybody stitching you and trying to roast you, but the algorithm probably knows we're friends, so maybe that's why.
Oh wait, are we stitching?
Are
we stitching and roasting you? Have I not seen that video yet?
No, I haven't had those.
Oh, I'm just assuming because you have the haters. You have people being being sweet to you in stitches?
Well, I mean, I started hating on him at an early mindset when I found out this man doesn't like flare pens.
Yeah, that's kind of how our friendship started.
It's not forgivable, actually. So that makes sense.
That's like the Cruciatus curse
for life. Pilot G2 for life. I said what I said.
Wow.
I will die on this hill stabbing people with my Pilot G2.
You're going to have to use your Bastion if you're going to stab people.
It's weighty enough. Dude. That thing's solid.
And if the tip breaks, you just use it as a fist pack.
Yeah, that's genius,
like a spacer,
actually.
Man.
Good Lord.
So, Andrea, how's your summer going?
It's been so fast, I will say.
It's crazy how fast this summer's flying by, right? Like mine's gone. So
yeah, you're like fully done. I go back for in-service on Thursday, so I have like 4 more days. It's been really good. My goal this summer was just to like build memories with my 2 kids and try and progress towards the PhD. And I had really lofty goals of working on my book this summer, and it just has been eaten up through preparing for my PhD. So I'm really hoping this next year I'll still be able to get my book done and all of that. But yeah, it's been a good summer. It's just been probably one of the least restful summers I've had since I started teaching.
I totally hear you on that one.
So tell us about your PhD program. What's the focus of your PhD?
Yeah, so it's a PhD in curriculum and instruction.
Nice.
And yeah, so trying to like focus on that. It's not like an ed leadership one or any of those. My dissertation is focused on evaluating the way that stress impacts first-year teachers' relationships with their students. Because as we all know, like relationships are pivotal. Like that's once you figure out that piece of your teaching practice, like that changes everything else. Like if you can build relationships with any kid that comes into your room, it completely shifts everything. And so like my research is basically looking into, okay, like when someone enters the classroom, what are the pieces that make their stress worse or lessen it? Are teachers who had like a full year of student teaching, are they less stressed? Because one of like the whole theory I'm working off of is based on, gosh, I'm blanking on the theorist names, but it's the transactional theory of stress or appraisal. Man, I'm going to mess it up now. I'm trying to sound smart, guys, and it's going to go down in flames. Basically, what it means is that the way that you frame the stressful experience in your mind in retrospect will inform your behavior in the future. So if you have a horrible first year, if your first year is trash, the admin just completely destroys you, puts a bunch of duties on you and all of that, you're going to then think of your teaching practice as a stressful, bad, horrible thing, regardless of what happens the next year. Versus if you have a really positive first year with a lot of supports, with a lot of resources, with all of that, if the next year is bad, it's not going to feel like your teaching practice is bad because you had that good first foundational experience. So like the research I'm doing is basically looking at those bits and pieces of a first year teacher's experience. And it's a case study. So I'm going to work with 10 brand new teachers and basically be interviewing them, observing them, collecting their discipline data to figure out, okay, what is your experience like? How does that translate to the kinds of relationships you have with your students? And kind of going from there.
Can I get a copy of that when you're done? Because
yes.
Let me tell you, I'm super stoked to, as you know, a 4th year teacher, to hear what you come up with all of that. Because I mean, I've been teaching through COVID. That's all I know right now.
Yeah, so I made a video today kind of joking about like seasoned teachers versus new teachers. And I had so many teachers that like started in the past 3 years that were like, excuse me, like I count as seasoned now, which I agree with, by the way. Like if you came to teaching in the midst of COVID, if you were a student teacher last year, if you dealt with any of this stuff over the past 3 years, like you get an immediate pass to seniority. Especially like, right? If you're still here and you like existed in the school system over the past 5 years, then like you win all the awards in my book. Like you get all of the accolades because it has been just a dumpster fire.
A dumpster fire inside a dumpster fire. It's been so that's also the inspiration for your book that you're writing, isn't it?
Yeah, so the book is kind of like a first-year teacher's survival guide. So the book idea came first back when I, like about a year and a half ago when I started the dissertation and doctoral process. I wasn't sure what I wanted to work on. And then as I started to do that and progress through, I decided I wanted to be about helping first-year teachers. And then I started the TikTok knowing I eventually want to help teach new teachers. And so the idea for the book and the TikTok came around the same time. And TikTok and Instagram and social media is kind of the vehicle that I'm hoping to reach the audience that I'm hoping to get to. And so while I was working on that and the dissertation, it's all kind of like 3 things that I'm doing all at the same time that I'm kind of hoping will all coincide so that I can like get to the audience that is going to need the book and have the data to back it up with my research and all of those pieces kind of together to help new teachers be successul.
That's awesome.
I love that. So the premise of this whole show kind of comes from this, when I was sitting in therapy and I was just struggling really bad. And a therapist said to me, when everything's falling apart, you can reclaim your breath and you have to do it one at a time. And so it led to this thought process for me of reclaiming my breath. Now, what can I claim around me? And I love what you're bringing to the table with your research and the survival guide, because that's like reclaiming the foundation of teachers.
Yeah.
Because so many teachers, they don't make it through their first year. A lot of people don't realize that. They don't make it through their first year. They might make it to the second year. But, statistically, when I was doing research for my thesis, I found out that within the first 5 years, like 45% of teachers are gone. But you're reclaiming that foundation through your research. I absolutely love that.
Yeah. And I mean, I always see that statistic as well. And what I'm noticing is it's nearly impossible to find the statistic about how many teachers have left since COVID started. And if it's higher, like I keep seeing statistics kind of massaged into making it sound like it's not that bad, guys. And I'm like, let me tell you, like if it's not showing in the numbers yet, I think by 1 year from now, we will actually have seen all of the damage. Because I think a lot of principals are like, no, it's fine. We'll hire people this fall, and we're going to see what some states I know are doing, where they're just hiring people who are not licensed, which I was not licensed when I started teaching. So just like not judging those people who are trying to become teachers. But we have the situation now where we're going to have warm bodies in the classroom, but we're going to see some problems that come along with just not having the training and experience on a mass scale, right? Like because a lot of schools I think have a rule where like you have to have a certain number of teachers with licensure at your school. Like it has to be like 80% or whatever are fully licensed, and then you could hire like 20%. And I think that's we're gonna see kind of goes away, where it's like we're gonna have 50% teachers that are either unlicensed or zero experience or any variety of that. And so the experience that I relied on when I first became a teacher won't be there. Like the people who I would go to aren't going to be there, which is scary,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the fallout, and I don't think people realize, like the pandemic was one thing. The fallout is just going to keep exponentially biting us in the back.
Because I don't think, like Andrea said, we've felt the full impact of what that's brought to a teacher's plate, right? Where the numbers are being massaged right now because people don't really want to see what the true impact is. Because I would be one to bet that we don't know what the true impact is. Like principals still can't even figure out those numbers because it's continuously happening more and more and more. Like I just got an email today. We lost 2 more teachers at our school, and they're not transferring. They're not doing. They just left.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
I actually saw in December of 2021, the Surgeon General sent out a letter about the mental health of kids in this country, and that the amount of kids who have like a major depression or anxiety issue right now, it went from 1 in 3 pre-pandemic, or no, 1 in 5 pre-pandemic to 1 in 3. And literally the letter was like, this is a problem, guys. This is really, really, really not okay. That means 1/3 of our kids are dealing with this in our classrooms. This is not okay. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know of any schools that have increased by that percentage the amount of mental health professionals in the schools.
Definitely not.
My school has 0.
No.
Yeah,
I have counselors. I have counselors.
Our counselors are running the boards. They're dealing with schedules. They're not counseling.
No,
right? Because they don't have the time.
No. No, and that's the same. It's even worse at a middle school. I feel bad for my counselors.
Oh my
like,
gosh.
I want to buy them copious amounts of coffee and other beverages of their liking.
Other beverages, yes.
Just because I know they are working so hard. Like this last year, we had to put in a ticket system for kids just to be able to see their counselors. So they had to go online and submit a Google form, and then their counselor would eventually get it. And then be like, oh, yeah, I was supposed to call little Johnny Bravo down to my office 7 hours ago. We'll get to him tomorrow. Hope it's okay.
And that's the thing I don't think people realize. Like the same thing in our school. The counselors had to start setting a schedule. And so we're not sending kids to the counselor anymore. So my hallway talks that I'm having with kids have increased big time.
Yep.
So instead of the once in a while I'm having to step out in the hallway, it's several times a day I'm stepping into the hallway. And I'm like hands on shoulders talking a kid down from an anxiety attack.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a trained professional.
Right.
I'm only going on my own experience.
Yeah. And, we're doing the best we can. But, as people pointed out, because I always talk about like my hallway talks and how I do it and everything. And every single time people are like, well, what are the rest of the kids doing at that point? And I'm like, is whatever I tell them to do, hopefully. But there's probably 4 other kids that are in a similar state as the kid I'm with out in the hallway, because we can only put out one fire at a time. We're only one person, and we're dealing with a problem that's much bigger than us. And we do our best, right? Like we are making a difference. But it is incredibly overwhelming to think about the scale of what these kids are dealing with, some of them.
Right.
And it's stressful, I think, and frustrating to us because we're dealing with our own mental health stuff from the pandemic and all of that. And then on top of that, we're trying to regulate these kids, and that takes it out of you and is triggering often. And it's rough. And meanwhile, like in the midst of all of this, I really have not heard much at all about people discussing the need for mental health workers in the schools to increase exponentially. Like we don't need just like one staff member. Like we need a team of people who can get to know these kids on a personal level that is only there because kids, when they're in crisis mode, they are vulnerable and they are in desperate need of a caring adult. And if they have to write out a freaking Google form, like by the time the person sees them, they're not going to be in that kind of a state. They're going to close back up, clam back up, and they're not going to talk. They're going to be like, I'm fine now.
Yep.
Because they think they are.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it just, it's so infuriating.
It just perpetuates the issue.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Kicks the can down the road and usually makes it worse, which is scary.
Yeah.
It really is. Brett, I think that's a perfect segue into the questions we were going to ask. She is ready.
She knows
to deal with this topic.
It's like she's done this before.
We got the right person for this episode.
I do want to kind of go back just to rewind just a little bit and kind of get, Andrea, what took you into your path for teaching?
So it was kind of a lot of things. I had a teacher who was phenomenal in high school who saw me being a slacker because I did not have the excuses a lot of my students have of like home life stress and all of that, like very safe home. I was not worried about where my food was coming from. I was straight up lazy. I did not want to work, because a lot of times we're just like, oh, they're going through. So I was going through nothing. Other than just being a teenager and being like, oh, life is pain, and like listening to Avril Lavigne and, I had nothing to complain about, but I was full of feelings anyways. And I just remember I turned in a paper to that teacher and was like, here you go. And she graded it, gave it back, and it was a B-. I was like, sweet, because I did it the night before. And she called me out on it and was like, this is not acceptable. Don't turn this kind of work into me again. And I'm like, it's a B. And she's like, yeah, and you're an A student in English. Don't do that again. And it shifted my mindset about myself as a learner, as a individual. And it completely transformed how I saw myself. So like that would probably be the seed. And then I actually have like a journal entry from when I was 19 saying, I think I want to be a teacher, but I don't want to be poor. And so I avoided teaching for a while. Awesome. Literally, I wrote like, I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be a teacher. It sounds like fun, but I don't want to do that. And so my husband and I got married very, very young. I was 19 when we met and 21 when we got married. And he had just got out of the Marine Corps. So we ended up moving to Virginia, because he got a job offer right after he got out. And so we did not have a degree between us. Like, he had gotten out of the Marine Corps. He went in when he was 18. I had not gotten my associate's degree yet. And so when we moved there, like, we had no degree between us. And I started going to community college there, got into a 4-year university that way.
Nice.
And then got my English degree because I wanted to be a technical writer, I thought, or a travel writer. And then while I was doing that, I was working at a grocery store, Wegmans. I don't know if you guys have Wegmans anywhere by you at all. It's a great grocery store.
I got family in Virginia, so I hear about Wegmans all the time.
It's the best. And so I was like a night manager there, and I worked 4 to midnight, and they put me in charge of training the cashiers. And I was working with 16 to 18-year-olds. I was like 22, working with 16 to 18-year-olds, and I was teaching them how to run the register and learn produce codes. And it was so fun. I was like, this is the best. And I was like creating lesson plans and figuring out fun ways to review stuff. I'm like, gosh, this is fun. And then, and it still didn't occur to me like, oh, maybe I should take my English degree into the classroom. Instead, I just went and got a job at a technical writing place and was so bad at that job because you have to sit still and quiet. And then people who know math and science come talk to you about math and science. And then I'm supposed to write the math and science down. I'm not going to say I damaged our country during that time, but I'm not going to say I didn't because I was so bad at that job. And it was like a government contractor. Like, it was a real, everything is probably my fault, to be honest.
Did they give you the launch codes?
Bad. Thank God, no. If they did, I wouldn't have understood.
Are you the reason for Common Core?
Probably. I don't like. I mean, oh my gosh, you guys! I was so bad at that job. I was like the personality hire 100%, would like wander from office to office and then do like a little. And I felt horrible about myself because I have a good work ethic, and I knew they weren't getting their money's worth because I could not do that job well.
Right.
So then I was looking at a bunch of different jobs. And then finally was like, well, maybe I can get into the grad school and become a teacher because I liked training cashiers. And so I applied to the local grad school that was like tied to where I got my bachelor's degree, and they let me in and kind of took off from there. I did not, like I said earlier, I did not have my license when I started teaching. Because they told me English teachers are a dime a dozen. You're not going to be able to land a job without a license. And I'm like, challenge accepted. I'm doing that. Because I was married. Like, I wasn't on, like, my parents weren't helping us. We were on our own. I couldn't afford to work for free. So, I found a Title I school in a really rural area that was really desperate, and they hired me without my license. And my student teaching year was my first year teaching.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a journey.
It sounds like it. It sounds like journey is kind of your thing, because your TikTok is definitely a journey. Like,
true.
I would say that's definitely, I think there's two kind of teachers. They're the teachers that traditional, like right out of high school or whatever, they know exactly what they're going to do and they kind of take that path. And then there are the people in this current podcast episode. None of us went straight into teaching. Brett did retail for 14 years. I was in the Army and then doing all sorts of different things, and we've stumbled into this or found our way into it one way or another. And if I remember talking to you before, you never expected what happened with TikTok to happen.
Not at all. Like, when I started it, I created a couple of videos, and I was really inconsistent for like the first 6 months, and would just post a video every once in a while. And I had that viral video hit within like the first 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it was one where I was talking about how, like, I caught kids doing dirty stuff under the desk. So of course it blew up, right? Like, of course it did. And it was a really quick video. It was like 15 seconds long. But I mean, at that point, I literally had, I think, 20 followers, and they were all people I actually knew. And then it went to like 3,000 followers after that video. And I still was just kind of like randomly doing it. And at that point, it was just like, oh, I wanted, if somebody Googled my name, I wanted something education related to come up. I figured it would be far down like the list on Google, but like if they were searching for me, they could find something, and it would be something education related, so I could eventually land a job teaching college, and hopefully, if people were going to publish my book, they could find stuff about education on there as well. Like that was kind of where my mindset was. So last summer I went started a website and had 3 things on there. And I remember filling out the bio. When I filled out the bio and I wrote speaker, writer, presenter. I've spoken at 2 things now. But when I wrote that, I was laughing so hard because I was like, I mean, it's true. I speak to students all the time, but I just remember feeling like such a fraud when I wrote the website, because I was writing it as if I had already made it,
Right.
I wrote it like I was a grown up. And was like, I know what I'm doing, and created this whole page, and then have kind of seen it kind of come to fruition where I've done a couple speaking engagements, which has been really cool and all of that, but it's all been completely shocking to me. Neutrogena reached out to me to do an ad.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Let's
put it
go.
on there, and I think they were doing a teacher thing, but I did it and it's already up live on their TikTok channel. And it was the weirdest thing in the world to do that and see it up there. The guy they had before me was Thor, the guy who chops wood that's on all those thirst traps.
Oh, yeah.
He was the one who did the video before mine for Neutrogena. And I was like, whoa, I'm in some TikTok royalty company here.
That is impressive. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, go check out Neutrogena's TikTok.
Yeah, for sure.
And we will now not look directly at you through the remainder of this recording.
It's okay. It got 200 views, so it humbled me real quick.
That's the way it goes. I remember my first branded TikTok was oh, well that flopped. Okay.
Yeah. No. I'm expecting the brand to be thank you so much. You saved us, actually. You saved all of us and our jobs. So thank you for doing a TikTok with us. That has yet to occur. So
we're building a new factory just from that one TikTok. Thank you.
Yep. So because the 4 products you used in the video, you did it.
Killed it.
Right.
That right there, ladies. I can imagine you in the classroom because your sarcasm has to carry over. You teach freshmen, right?
Yeah, freshmen and sophomores.
You have got to be sarcastic to deal with that nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. And I'm trying to get myself, because I think that when I think about how stressed I was at the end of the school year last year, I have a hard time thinking about going back in a week, because the kids come back a week from Wednesday. And I get stressed about it until I remember that at the end of every single first day of school, I always sit down and think, this is exactly where I'm meant to be. I have that feeling of just yes, this is where I feel most me, is when I'm working with these kids and teaching and all of that. I just feel I'm so in the right place. And it always makes me feel a little bit better, but man, the lead up to it is always a lot.
Indeed.
Love it.
All right. So coming in and out, because you obviously are a veteran teacher, so you had some boots on the ground prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now post-pandemic. I think one of the biggest things that we're talking about within this episode is kind of reclaiming that, classroom management. And this is prime real estate to talk about that. So if you could, enlighten us a little bit and kind of what you saw pre, during, post. Are there any similarities, behaviors that you see coming up, especially, that age range might produce some? I don't know. But yeah, give us a little bit of insight as to kind of what you saw from your students during that span of, COVID and whatnot.
Yeah, so I've taught in 3 different schools. One was in Virginia, very rural, like I said, Title I school. And one was a private small Christian school in California. And then the current one, which is a very big public school, Title I school in California. So I've taught very different demographics. But kids are kids is what I have come to see. I kind of expected the demographics to play more of a role, and the problems change for the kids, but the reactions are pretty consistent for these kids. So, for a really simple example of that is in Virginia, kids would be dipping skull in their lips and skull cans in their jeans and all of that. You could see the outline of their skull cans.
Absolutely.
And you would never see that in a California school. Like, I can't even fathom seeing that in a California school. People would not know what a warm Dixie cup would mean if they picked up like a little warm Dixie cup. They'd be like, is someone drinking tea? Like, they would have no idea. But if you taught in a rural school, you guys know exactly what that means.
Don't touch it. Don't drink it.
Which if your listeners don't know, that means that someone's been using it to spit there while they were dipping. And it's the grossest thing to discover in a classroom ever. And I had that in Virginia a few times. Whereas in California, I'm catching kids vaping. I had a kid who was charging her vape pen on her Chromebook and had called me over to look at her Chromebook for something and then realized she was charging her vape pen. I'm like, child.
Classic freshman move.
Right, exactly. So like and their reactions are always the same of like, no, I wasn't, and how they handle. And usually they're the kids who are, stressed or whatever, that are, especially kids who are doing things so obviously in the midst of class, are kind of like asking for a little bit of attention and are kind of giving us their own little red flags.
Right.
So like behaviors are kind of the same, even pre and post pandemic. What I notice is that the amount of kids who are in desperate need of a lot of TLC and attention and correction has exponentially increased. Like we talked about with that letter that was sent out. I mean, it made perfect sense to me when I read that. I was like, no, yeah, like it is a third of my class that desperately needs one-on-one attention or is like depressed and is completely removed. Mm-hmm. Or is like anxious and is doing things that are disruptive to others, or, so many different things that normally you would only have, like, let's say in a class of 33 kids or 4 kids that are dealing with that stuff. You could take the time. You could take the time to help those 4 kids, and the rest would be okay and all of that. In a class where it's like 6 kids, 9 kids, that you're talking about a third of the class that is struggling massively, and you can't do it all. Right. And I think that's been the biggest classroom management challenge I've noticed since coming back. Also, building relationships has been much harder. And I think that is really tied to their phone usage. I think that they are exacerbating their mental health challenges, and they're trying to treat it using their phones, and they're actually making it worse. I mean, every study that's out there says like, hey, guess what? Your phone is making you sicker. It's making you more anxious, making you more depressed, all of those things. But they just don't have the tools available to them to manage it. And so when you are taking their phone, you are taking the thing that they think is going to make them feel better, and it's doing the opposite. So I've definitely noticed the phones are much, much worse. I think they have an actual addiction, a lot of them, to their phones. Like their serotonin levels are like massively tied to their phones at a level that I've never seen before. Because we forced these kids on screens for 2 years, right? A lot of places did. And so now their brains are very reliant on that. And I mean, I notice it myself. Like I physically have to remove my phone from where I can reach it when I'm doing my studies. Like I have to move it away so I don't touch it, because it's like a nervous habit that I've come to get, where I'm just like, oh, and then I'm like, why am I on my phone right now? I'm trying to focus. So those would be the main things, just like the mental health in general. And the massive reliance on phones has just gotten so much worse.
So with that, the increase, not a difference necessarily in behaviors, but an increase, what adjustments have you attempted to make? If you could speak to what's working or what's not working, or just kind of your approach you've taken.
Yeah, so last year was hard, as we know. It was a little challenging. And I kind of had to fumble my way through, I think, like all of us did, because we couldn't do the same things, right? Like it was like teaching kids that were several years younger than the actual grade. And so some of the things I had to do were almost as if I had an IEP in my entire class, where like a lot of times if you have students who are neurodivergent, they need shorter deadlines, more repetition, more like reminders, physical reminders, different ways you're giving them reminders, visualizations, all of those things. I basically started doing that across the board, where I would give lots of reminders. I could not sit down at all. Like, work on your paper is not going to happen. I had to say, okay, today we're going to write the first paragraph. This is what that paragraph should look like. okay, get started. And then I would have an aide or another teacher, because in almost all my classes, I'm very fortunate. We have this program called Gear Up, where we have tutors in the class with us.
Nice.
And it's a federally funded program, and they have been following this group of kids up from, I think, 7th grade. So the tutors that have been there the whole time actually know the kids. And a lot of times, if I have a kid that like you must sit with them or they do nothing, I sit that kid right next to the tutor, and the tutor will work with that kid and like 3 other kids. And we'll literally sit there and be like, okay, now write the next sentence, like that level of attention. So lots of deadlines, basically treating the whole class as if we have an IEP. Behaviorally, man, what I dealt with a lot was just apathy. I didn't have a lot of explosive issues because I didn't really enforce the phone thing until 2nd semester, to be honest, because I just previously didn't have to. I felt like if I was up there speaking, they would put their phones away. It wasn't really a problem. And this year it was a problem. And it got to the point where kids were literally failing and they would still be sitting on their phone. And I would have contacted home. I would have done all the things, and they just full of apathy. And so I would have very frank conversations with them about, how I love them and I want them to be successful. And I also had to stop owning their success a little bit to protect myself.
Yeah.
Because I would beat myself up so much if a kid would literally do nothing and I couldn't get them to get motivated. And previously, like, you'd have maybe one kid that was that way. You'd be able to reach the rest. And the amount of kids that I felt like I couldn't quite get to had also increased. And that was really hard to handle. Because, I love them and I know the world that they're entering, and that, I literally had kids that were like, no, I'm just going to go be a drug dealer. I'll make more money. And I'm like, sweetie, not from jail. Like, it's not a good choice. And so, yeah, it was just, I did a lot of little things to try and help with it, but it felt like I didn't make as much progress as I wanted to. And I'm hoping this year I see a little bit more success, especially because I'm going to be really consistent and really firm with expectations. Because it was just, guys, the expectation issues was so bad because admin and everyone for the past year and a half had basically been like, give grace. And I'm like, that makes sense. Like, give grace to these kids. They're going through a lot. So we just, instead of giving grace, which means there's an expectation, some expectation, and then some understanding if they don't mean it, we were just like, let's remove the expectation. Let's just get rid of it. And I will 100% say that I am guilty of that because I didn't give any consequences for late work. I didn't do any of those things that I was like, this is great, we'll just help them. But when you give 0 consequences, what they learn is it doesn't matter. Unfortunately. And I was so frustrated. So, I mean, this year I'm going to be very understanding, but I'm also going to have like higher expectations and certain, if they don't turn something in on time, there's going to be some amount of, points docked or something like that. I'm not going to make them fail because they didn't, but I also think that we need higher expectations for the kids. And that was a big takeaway from last year, is that like my empathy blinded me to the fact that like they needed firmer boundaries than what they were being given.
I couldn't have said that better myself.
Thanks.
Boundaries were, oh God.
Yeah.
Let's see. Going through my list of questions here.
No worries.
Being back in classroom and talking about all these different instructional needs that we are seeing from all of our students. How are you putting that education Andrea spin on it to reclaim your instruction, even with all that outside, whether it's outside noise, outside influence, people berating you or what have you? How are you going to, or are you reclaiming your instructional model? Yeah, sorry about the curveball.
No, that's a really good one. I think that a big part of what I do is I try and remember that like the people that aren't in my classroom aren't in my classroom. And I also feel like my admin, I've been really fortunate where I don't feel like I'm not supported, you know? I feel like they have been there, they're supportive. And I have not seen what a lot of teachers have seen as far as like the challenges of the communities not being supportive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also I'm so glass half full. I'm not toxic positivity. Like, I'm not going to say that people don't have problems. I'm not going to do any of that. But if I'm sitting somewhere and if I'm sitting somewhere and I'm seeing that, you know, like there's an issue, I immediately try and like figure out a way to like make it better. I don't like being sad. I don't like being stressed. And that alone stresses my husband out because like my tire light will be on and I'm like, I can probably make it to work. Like, that's the kind of like, thing that I do to that poor man.
Says every
like,
wife in the world.
Yes.
I'm like, it's probably fine, which serves me poorly in some ways. And in other ways, it's really helpful. So like, I will have, you know, I'll come to class and I will like have seen a lot of really negative things on social media or whatever. But then I come to the classroom and I'm like, well, this is my place and I get to make it what I'm going to make it. And I get to work with my kids and make it as positive as possible. And I also think like big picture, I'm just trying to like more than getting English language learning things into their brains. I want them to have a safe, good place, you know, a safe place for them to come and have an adult who cares about them be
Right.
there for them. And like, I can do that, you know, like I can do that. And so I also kind of think that I've shifted my mindset of like that the learning goals will be met and I'm going to have high, especially this year, like high expectations. But it's a lot easier to be easy on yourself and on your students if your main goal is to give them like a safe place to be. And I think that's kind of how I'm trying to reclaim it of like, my job is to teach them the things, right? But it's also to make sure that they feel safe in my classroom. And that is my number one priority. And I know that's within my control, right? As much as possible. And I've had students that were unsafe before, like who they themselves were like unsafe to be around. And thankfully they were out of the classroom fairly quickly and all of that, because that's one of the things you can't control. But I think it's largely based on perspective and knowing that like I love my kids. And also when a kid hates me, like when a kid comes in and thinks that I'm the worst and thinks that I'm racist or whatever, because I had one girl, and I only say that because I had a girl this year who, it was early on in the school year. We had not really had any interactions. And I was standing at the door at dismissal and they had all kind of wandered by the door, and I hate that. And I was like, no, we can't leave yet. The bell has rung. And she pushed past me and left. And I was like, so I talked to her, like, and we had a great relationship all year. And she joked with me at the end of the year. I was like, yeah, when you wrote me up for that, I told everyone it was just because you were racist. And I'm like, why would you say that? Like, that is like, why would you tell everyone that? Like, that's so horrible. And, you know, so my goal when I have a kid who like dislikes me for whatever reason is just like love the crap out of them and figure out who they are. And like, I take it as a personal challenge of like, you don't like me, that's fine, but you will by the end of this year. Like, I guarantee you will eventually like me. Because it's really hard to not like somebody who really likes you, you know? And like, I just like destroy them with kindness and love. And that kind of eventually wears them down into, it's just too much work to hate me at that point. Like, if I'm going to smile at you and say, good morning, how was your weekend? Every time I see you, they're just like, oh, fine. It was fine. It was fine. You know, like, and there was one kid I remember this year who he was like real tough. Like, he was telling me how he was like going to be a gangbanger, and he very well, you know, he hadn't been jumped into a gang or any of that kind of stuff. But he was like acting really tough at the beginning of the school year. And I was like, cool. And we were working on our assignment. He's like, I'm not going to do this because I don't want to. I was like, that's okay. You can sit right next to me. And so I like moved his chair so that he sat next to my desk. So every time I sat down, and I would refer to him only as my best friend. And so when he would come in late, I'd be like, my best friend is here. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to see you. And like, he was trying so hard to be such an Eeyore all the time. And I just wore him down to finally be like, all right, fine, whatever. I guess we're best friends. I was like, yeah, we are. Like, just wear them down with your optimism and happiness and love. They can't stand it.
I love that, because that is so contrary to most of the educators I've met.
Yes.
When they have a student like that, it's, I've done all that I can, and now I'm going to go my own way. You, on the other hand, like, no, I'm going to lead with love, not my authority, and I'm going to drive you nuts loving you.
Yeah.
That's one. I like the fact that you're trying to annoy the kids. I love it.
Me too.
But
Always.
two,
I'm down. I'm down.
the fact that you were like, no, and that's one of the things I say all the time: lead with your love, not your authority. Because when you lead with your authority, it's impossible to get the love there. When you lead with the
Absolutely.
love, the authority comes, and
Yeah.
you're doing it right. You need to start doing bad things so we can hate you. All right.
Oh no, trust me. I will tell you something I did terribly this year, and it was grading. I was so bad at updating the grade book. It was so bad. Literally, I had kids in my comments on TikTok from my classes telling me to stop making TikToks and grade their work. I'm like, it's fair. Because I legitimately forgot that I had a third period that was not being graded by my student teacher. Because I had a student teacher second semester, and she took care of, what was it? It was fourth period. So fifth and sixth, she took care of completely. She graded everything, put it in the grade book, right? So I didn't even think about it. And they were all freshmen, fourth, fifth, and sixth freshmen, first and third sophomores. So I was just thinking all I have to grade is the sophomores. And so it was like a month and a half at one point. And I did like some fun activity. And like, there were like 3 girls who just hated me because they'd turned stuff in late and it hadn't been updated. So their grade had suffered and they had turned stuff in and their parents were still on their case. So that was my bad. So that is something I need to work on, is like being more consistent about submitting grades and getting stuff back to them, because I struggle with that.
I was horrible with that.
Like, there's fun things to do. Like, why would I grade?
Yeah,
That's
let's make TikToks. I mean, come on now.
Exactly. I'll make a TikTok about grading, but I don't want to actually grade. That's so boring.
Genius. Love it. Well, maybe this is your year to reclaim grading. Or not.
I don't want to reclaim it, though. I don't want to reclaim it.
I'm going to use my Cricut right here, and I'm going to make a reclaim grading sticker that you can put on your desk, and I'm going to send it to you.
Could you also make one that says "do your attendance"? Because that's the other thing I fail at so bad.
I saved all the nasty grams I got. Oh boy,
I was the attendance person this year. I made a bunch of TikToks like I forgot, but I actually never did.
I'm so proud of you.
Then I started forgetting. Because are you a teacher if you don't forget your attendance?
No.
I don't think so. It was so bad at one point that she printed out every single day and class that I had forgotten and physically had someone hand it to me, because then I had to do the attendance for those days, which like it had been like a month since some of these had happened. And I'm like, are we really thinking that I'm going to remember who was absent like 3 Thursdays ago in second period? Of course not. So like, and those are legal documents. We're legally required. Like, we could be called to testify. Like, a kid could get out of a crime that they committed if I say that they were in class.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will enable so many criminals. It's so bad.
My registrar just stopped emailing me.
Nuts with love.
Yeah.
Right.
My registrar stopped emailing me. She just would call my classroom, and I'd look and be like, I'm taking attendance right now.
It's so bad. I feel so terrible. Like, I need to like start the year by getting her coffee or something and just apologize for who I am, because I know I would love to be like, I'll fix it. It's my 9th year teaching. I should have fixed it by now. I should know how to take attendance. And I think it's because I start the class very like active and like have them doing the things. And it's just because I'm so bell to bell that I couldn't possibly. I'm not a bell-to-bell teacher. I would love to say that I am, but I use the beginning and the end of class for relationship building. So
nice.
In that sense, I'm bell-to-bell.
If my administrators are listening, I am totally bell-to-bell.
What's that?
So, other than taking your attendance, what advice do you have for teachers who are struggling with those behaviors right now?
And grading.
And grading.
Right. Don't ask me about those. I'm no help. I would say to focus on the relationships first. above and beyond any other kind of thing, is figure out who this kid is, figure out their story, contact the counselors and find out if they know about the kid and if there's a backstory that you don't know. Because hopefully eventually the kids will share with you. They're not going to like spill their guts day one. Like, you're not going to be like, hey guys, fill out this Google form. And they're going to be like, well, my mom left when I was 4. And since then we've been living in and out of hotels, you know, like that's not going to be week 1. But the goal at first, especially, is to build relationships. And it's through the things that are uncomfortable to do sometimes, like icebreakers, that are really engaging and low pressure and don't put kids on the spot. And trying to learn names. I am also really bad at names. It is, that one really actually does bother me. I really try. But my brain just exits out the names so quickly. And it was so hard with masks. Oh my gosh, it was hard.
It was atrocious. It was absolutely atrocious.
Impossible.
I just would be like, hey, you. And then, or I would have my roster and I would be looking away from the classroom and I would just pick a name off the roster and read it and say, okay, you do whatever, you know, and I don't call names normally very much either. But my recommendation would be to focus on relationships. Don't correct in public. Take them into the hallway, have the hallway chat. Take the time, especially early in the year when it's most exhausting and happens all the time. Because if you do the work at the beginning of the year, the relationships are built and you won't have to do it as much at the end of the year. Setting that foundation of I respect you enough to not try and embarrass you. Don't get in power struggles with the kids. It's so much better to lose a battle than to win a battle in front of the kids. And then you have destroyed a relationship with a kid. And it a lot of times is very hard to come back from.
Yeah. And
you have to really apologize when you screw up, because you will screw up. It happens. There was one time, oh my gosh, there was a girl who had a boyfriend, who she had been talking on the phone with a lot. And it was towards the beginning of the school year last year. And she was sitting talking to some guy. And I made some comment about you need to sit down. And she's like, I'm talking. I was like, does your boyfriend know you guys are talking like that? And she looked at me who is this chick? And I was like, oh, that was so stupid. Because I meant to make a comment just to her. Other kids heard it. And then the horrible ooh thing happened, which as a teacher who's trying to be jokey with a kid, that makes something that could be oh haha to you have now bullied a kid in front of everyone.
Right.
It completely changes everything. And so I had to apologize to her and be like, I am so sorry that I did not that was my bad and all of that. And so I would say make sure if you when you screw up, apologize and take ownership, because that reestablishes the relationship and helps them feel hey, maybe you're human too and you can take responsibility. Because a lot of times kids have not seen that happen with adults, you know, there's a lot of adults out there that do not take responsibility when they screw up. So I think it's also important that you kind of model that for them as well.
Facts. That's amazing advice. And I don't think we could have picked a better person to talk about relationships, Brett.
No, not at all, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm going to take a lot of what you've said here today, Andrea, and I'm going to start applying it within my classroom, because it was a rough year last year. So I'll just say it that way.
Yeah, I think we all felt it, obviously Quit Talk was crazy with all the teachers talking about leaving. And it took a lot of really intentional thinking to keep in mind that others people's experiences are not mine, and I don't need to internalize the experiences of the outside world as my own. Because I think I saw some of that as well, where, I have a great district, I have great kids. It was really challenging, but I was not having the same experience as other teachers. And I would find myself extra frustrated or ready to be frustrated because I had just come off of watching a bunch of videos about teachers who were in much worse situations than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just kind of adopt that attitude. And I'm like, that's not helpful, right? The kid in front of me is not the kid who threw a chair at their teacher's face,
Right.
That's not what's happening here. And yeah, so I think perspective is super key and super important.
Mm-hmm.
And also finding your village, And, sometimes it's not even at your school. I've got really cool, like, English level team that I work with. But there have been previous schools where, like, there wasn't really that connection, and I had to kind of go outside to find it. So
I like that. Find your village.
Yeah.
I think I found some of my village right here with you two. That's for sure.
Honestly, though, and, like, even with having, like, a really cool team at my school, it has been so therapeutic to make TikToks and joke and, like, talk to other secondary teachers and teachers who don't teach, like, the K through 5th grades and stuff.
Right.
Because I felt like that's all I saw on social media, or that's all that was like out there was
that's
like,
what was predominant. Yeah.
Yeah. For
right.
Sure.
Like, you're a second grade teacher and look at these sweet, precious angels you're teaching and this beautiful classroom and everything's so perfect and everything's great. And I'm like, but it's not though all the time, and it's okay. And we can laugh about it. Like, and right. I think that's why all three of us have kind of found the traction we have, is because those voices were not really there. I think people were really afraid to be like, let's talk about the crazy things these kids say out loud to my face.
Right.
Like, and I think a lot of people are afraid of their admin getting angry at them and all of that, because I know some admin does. I've had random admin before comment on my TikToks and say, like, how dare you? And I'm like, what?
Yeah, I get those too. What do your administrators think? Well, they follow me. So
right. And they know good and well I'm not talking about their PD, because they don't run it like this. So they wouldn't be offended about my jokes about professional development. The fact you are offended tells me a lot about the way you run yours.
That's why I don't make jokes about PD, because I'm pretty sure I might.
Does it look like my videos?
Oh yeah. No. I mean, I've only had 1 year of in-person PD.
Honestly, the first few years of professional development, I loved it, because I felt like I was just like, give me all the information, which is why if someone asked me to run PD at a school, I would probably say no, because I think teachers are the absolute most hostile audiences for professional development speakers ever.
That's a whole nother episode.
Mm-hmm. Like,
we take
I
on the
no
personality
desire.
of our students.
Oh,
it's
God.
horrible. And I made some videos last year about, like, joking about how bad teachers are, and teachers would defend it of like, well, it's stupid and we don't need to learn it anyways. And I'm like, do you realize that's the same thing our students say to us? Like, my bad behavior is justified because I don't think that this content is relevant to me. Like, right. And like, there is bad PD, right? Like, that's the joke I make all the time, is like, oh, that there is some really bad professional development out there. But I just think that would be a nightmare to me. I don't want to teach people who don't actually want to sit there and listen to me. I do that anyways at high school. Like, they have to be there. They are like already hostile enough.
Right.
But like, teachers, I think, are like, I would be terrified. So I would like present at conferences and like go to like Teach Your Heart Out, which of course there's also no conferences for secondary. So
nope.
Yeah, no.
Honestly, the audacity. They're just taking it, like, K through 5th, right? Because Teach Your Heart Out and Get Your Teach On, I think, are both primarily elementary.
Yeah, they're all primary focused. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, let me come and speak, and I'm like, oh wait, no, they don't want to hear me because I'm secondary. So
yeah.
So to all of us, all the listeners out there, if you run massive conferences like that, let's hook us secondary teachers up.
Yeah, let's have a cool one, right? Like, because Teach Your Heart Out and Get Your Teach On are freaking cool.
They're amazing.
Like,
absolutely.
They look so hyped up. They look like they're having the best time, and they're all having fun, and they've got like performers and cool stuff. And I'm like, I want to go to wherever and do the cool things.
I want to do that.
I want to do the cool things. And like, a lot of the other like teacher TikTokers and stuff that are out there doing it are all elementary school teachers. Yep. Like Miller in 5th, I think is her name, or something like that. Like, there's like a bunch of really cool ones, but they're all like elementary. And I'm like, they're all out there having fun.
I'm jealous.
It's rude that we're not invited. Yeah.
True.
Like, I want to also come. Although we could all just go to VidCon next year.
Hey, I'm
down.
Go. I'm down.
If it's still in LA, I'm going to actually try and come next year because it's close.
Have our own teacher booth.
I honestly, though, I would be all for that, because then it would be cheaper too if we all just hung out there.
Amen to that.
Save some money. Right?
Well, Andrea, I mean, speaking for me, I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. You've brought a lot of great insight into the realm of kind of regaining that almost that trust base from our students coming back into the classroom and dealing with classroom management and instructional management. So I want to thank you really for taking your time out of your evening to come spend time with us bearded yahoos as we, threw questions your way.
It was super fun. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, and we will see you on the talks.
Sounds good.
So, Brett, absolutely loved having educator Andrea on today. She gave us a lot. So, like, what's one thing for sure you're going to take away? Because she gave us a lot to deal with.
Honestly, one of the things that I think I struggle with, just simply because I am a football coach, is not allowing my presence to overtake. And I want to really take that leading with love and really infuse that into my classroom. I thought I did it, but, hearing her kind of talk about power struggles and not calling students out in class, making sure that it's that personal basis. So that leading with love and building it that way. I know hearing her talk kind of made me go, I need to do a lot more of that. So I've written it down and like triple underlined it. That's the one thing I really want to focus on in my classroom this year.
Yeah, definitely. That's, she's talking about trauma-informed teaching without really coming out and saying trauma-informed teaching. She's aware of what the impact of her, what she says is going to have an impact. And I love the fact that she's owning her mistakes, just on the spot, apologizing. But I'm going to take away that I'm going to annoy them until they like me. I'm going to annoy them with love until they like me. I'm not going to give up. I don't ever want to give up on the kid.
Right.
I'm going to walk away. That kid may never, ever decide to come onto my side, but I know that I've done nothing but pour love. And that to me was just so powerful. She needs to turn that into a talk. I'll go hear that at a conference.
Well, she needs to turn that into a TikTok sound, honestly, because when she said that, all I could hear is, you don't like me? That's fine. I'm going to love you back anyway. And kind of put that own little spin on it. And I'm like, that's phenomenal. Absolutely.
That needs to happen. It was amazing. I'm excited. I'm excited about next week, but as usual, I'm not going to tell you who's coming, folks.
Nor should you.
It's not going to happen. We'll see you next time. Until then, please reclaim your life one breath at a time.
See ya.
Hey, Brett and I really appreciate you hanging out with us today. We hope this is helpful for you. We hope it helps you reclaim your passion for education one breath at a time. You can find more information about us, the show notes, and some additional resources at educationreclaimed.com.